Right guys, so we've made all the basic structures, covered all the basic structures. We've got the wings, tailplane, rudder, fuselage. Now, we're going to be putting radio controlled equipment in this, and actually in your instructions there is a complete page about installing the radio control equipment. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the installation of the radio gear in here. I have chosen a couple of servos, and what we really want to do is, before we install all this, we need to have a complete ground run to make sure that everything's working. I will, on the actual build, give you some little dimensions of the servos. So these are the actual servos. So what's actually happening is you have two servos, you have a receiver, and I've got a battery. And basically what's happening is that this radio control equipment is sending a signal. It's coded, so all my movements are then sent as a radio signal to this little box here, which will then transfer that into electrical signals, which will then be transferred down into these servos. So golden rule with radio control aircraft, or in fact anything radio control, always switch the transmitter on. This is the bit you're holding in your hand. You always switch that on first. Make sure that if you're doing anything with power, that you've checked that the throttle is shut first. So we've switched the transmitter on, and I'm just going to switch the receiver on with this little switch. I've got a green light which tells me that the aircraft is receiving the signal, and you can see there that as I wiggle those about, those arms are moving in relation to how I'm moving. So I've got an up and down, and I've got a left and right. The one thing I'm just checking at the moment is that those servo arms, so that's these little chaps here, this is called a servo arm, that they're relatively straight, because what you want to do is get these set up, operating, that you're happy that they're all going well before you install it in the gear. So in other words, you don't want to find out a problem once you've got it in there. So the next step is we're going to make a couple of rods across here to support those. Right guys, you can see that I've actually put the servo rails in. These are these struts across here. Now, I've done it slightly differently than what's done on the plan. On the plan, it suggests running the servo rails slightly higher, but I thought it would be a very good idea to use the rear servo rail here, is actually sitting on top of the former, which gives it more support. Also, you'll notice that I've got a secondary block here, which makes this servo sit slightly higher. That will become obvious very shortly when I show you how we're going to do the control mechanism, but I just thought I'd show you that. Right guys, now we've got our little electric servos. Those arms are going to move backwards and forwards. Obviously we would need to transfer that movement back to the control surfaces. Now you'll notice that at the moment I haven't joined the rudder or the elevator sat on top as it should do. Now the reason being is I just wanted to talk about different ways of controlling the aircraft. You can buy these little chaps, that's called a control horn. They're plastic, and that's one way of doing it. And how you would conventionally normally do that was you'd have one of those on the rudder or the elevator, and then to link it up you'd either use a hardwood dowel and then a small piece of aluminium or steel with a thread on it with this little click fitting here, and the idea is that would actually click onto the control surface like so. Now because I know I've got some friends who are building this, we're going to look at different techniques. Another way of doing it is what's this sort of push rod in a tube, and you can buy it, comes with a couple of little fittings. That's another way of conducting that. Now the original sailplane is actually done with cables, and actually it's the cheapest way to do it, and I've been asked to do it the cheapest way possible. So what you want to do is you want to get yourself about 4 or 5 of these from McDonald's, Burger King, Costa Coffee or wherever, these little milk stirrers. Now, what I've done is I have cut 2 of these down to 2.5 centimeters. At each end, I've burnt a small hole in with a pin. I've just slotted that in there into the rudder like so. So that's going to sit on there. I'm going to glue that in place. I've also done exactly the same with the elevator, because what we're going to do is we're going to run a series of cables using braided fishing line. Don't use the nylon fishing line because it will stretch too much, but what you're looking for is some braided fishing line. You might have somebody that, or you might even be a fisherman yourself, but you've got some braided fishing line. That's what we're going to use, and we're going to build what's called a closed loop system. So you just need to make yourself 2 of these. The control horns are made from the milk stirrers, 2.5 centimeters, burn the little holes in. Just give you some idea of where I've actually put that horn there, and that one on the elevator. The only thing I would say is, ideally, I'd really like this horn closer. You really want the control holes over the hinge line if possible, but we're not going to be able to do that with this. That would be one of the advantages of using one of these. You could, if you want to carry on doing the closed loop system, but you want to use the commercial horns, then you can do so. But just make sure that when you're actually fitting the commercial horns, you're going to need 2, a top and a bottom, which is push and pull, but you want the control holes, if possible, sitting over the hinge line.